We help a variety of lenders do all sorts of things, right? As it pertains to like the inventory you mentioned, like that's very common on a variety of categories, right? Like e-commerce, things like that, in which you need to buy the inventory to be able to generate the sales, right?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And today we have an amazing guest, and we're gonna share with you an amazing story. So, our guest today, his name is Andres Klaric, and he's one of the co-founder of Fuse. So, if you please, Andres, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your company.
Hey Harry, how are you? Thanks for having me over. My name is Andres Klaric. I'm one of the co-founders of Fuse. I'm born in the US. I was raised my entire life in South America and Bolivia to be more specific. Uh, as mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Fuse. Fuse is focused on building a loan origination system, or that's kind of like long way of saying software for lenders out there, right? We help orchestrate the process of originating a loan across personal and commercial categories.
Excellent. And then now we're gonna ask you the questions and the step that everybody is waiting for. In your opinion, based on your experience and the unique process that you and the people in your company follow to achieve this success, what will be the 5 steps that everybody listening this podcast and want to see your story as a source of inspiration? They are sitting and they are maybe like you. They are, we can call it cash rich and time poor, working for an organization for a investment bank, and they want to start their own journey, right? And so, what would be the 5 steps that uh, people should follow in order to start the journey successfully? In your personal opinion, what steps, um, what these 5 steps that make you achieve your goals? Can you share them with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not prescriptive, but I think if I had to uh, collect my thoughts and think about what steps I followed, I think the number one first is, and these are professional ones, so not really getting into like personal life and elements like that. But in my view, it's important to kind of work out organizations that have already kind of have in place a culture or something that you admire or that are known
As a
for
role model, right?
a role model, right? Like otherwise, it's hard to see how it's done. I think that I did not become an entrepreneur like in my 20s. I did it in my 30s. So it was for me it was foundational to really build up that toolkit of things that are transferable and in essence learn from the stamina and like the dedication so that learn from others is very important, right? Like it's much easier to learn from others than learn on your own, because when you're learning on your own you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and when you learn from others it's in essence like it's the mistakes have already been made, so what you're learning is kind of at a higher level of operational excellence. So that's that.
I agree 100%
Yeah.
because I also, when I started my first company that also managed to sell over 5 million, it was in my 30s. And I remember I have a similar process. I learned from the organization that I was working for, and that gave me a lot of foundation. I think that in this competitive space that you are,
Yeah.
um, it's gonna be more harder journey if an entrepreneur had to figure out everything but try and error. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Second,
100%.
and I think building that knowledge enables you to also build some level of like financial security. I wouldn't describe it in like a trust fund, but like enough money to play around with and just take some risks, right? The last thing you want is to have like financial insecurity and like be terrified of that you're burning a hole in your savings, right? So I think work first, stabilize yourself, live within your means, and like save enough money that not do not bet at the far necessarily on like the idea, right? Like it, build some money, but build some kind of war chest that you can utilize to test an idea. I do believe that once you actually are going to start something, you should also set and this is kind of like, so the second point will be build some level of savings. The third is like when you're going to start the business, allocate time, right? I'm a big proponent of if you're going to do it, just take the plunge, right? Like don't try to do it half time, part time. Like you're always going to get the vertigo of if you know you're going to do it, just jump and just take the plunge. But that doesn't mean you should stay in the cold water forever. You take the plunge, but you set a finite time. You say like in the next 6 to 18 months, I'm going to live on this budget, and I'm going to allocate this amount of money to this idea or to whatever the process of finding an idea. If within that time frame you don't find the idea, I think it's totally okay to call it quits, right? Uh, I think I was completely prepared to fail out of the gates, right? That I was not going to find an idea. And you need to make your peace with that. Otherwise, you can spend years in ideas, the destructions of ideas. You can generate ideas every day, right? So when you put time, it forces you to kind of create a competitive process of like uh, picking a winner amongst those ideas, right? So once that's the third, right? Like timeline. Fourth, I would say really test the ideas as much as possible, right? Like, pick like 5 or 10 ideas and see which one gets the most traction, right? Like which one gets proof points, B2C, B2B. And I think that something that is useful is like there's this framework by NFX as a big investor here in the US. It's called the concept of fast moving water. Really, sometimes it doesn't really matter how smart or capable you are. So the idea, if you're in a market that is hot, I will tell founders, I do bet on yourself, but it's better if you bet on yourself, and on top of that, you're riding the right horse. So it's hard to hear that, right? Because a lot of founders think like, oh, I can make work anywhere. Newsflash, not every single market, no matter how good you are, certain markets are not as easy. So try to, you're going to enjoy building in most spaces. Try to find the spaces where like that fast moving water is. And last and not least, the fifth is I would recommend to build the business with someone that you trust. Hopefully not a friend or a romantic partner. It's better to build with someone you trust and you respect professionally, but with whom like the most important thing you're setting up with is the company. That way, like the baby you have is the company itself, and nothing else gets in the way, right? So those will be kind of like very foundational. I mean, we can go on and on about like self fund or venture capital and all of that, but since you asked for five, I think those are the five that I can think of right now.
Wow, fantastic. And now let's talk about how important is the lending in terms of let's talk first about business, right? I think that lending is a very important part of the business because at some point when the business is growing, all businesses are growing, they need working capital, right? And without that, the business unfortunately sometimes can operate and collapse, and you guys are filling this gap. So what is the proposition that you guys have for businesses in terms of providing the service, the lending, and in terms of rates, in terms of benefit, so they can consider to get lending from you rather from someone else?
Yeah, we do not lend at all, right? Like all we do is this, all we help our customers do is get the software that they need to lend themselves, right? They could use it for lending personal loans, approved credit cards, term loans for businesses, working capital loans, as you mentioned. Uh, we help a variety of lenders do all sorts of things, right? As it pertains to like the inventory you mentioned, like that's very common on in a variety of categories, right? Like e-commerce, things like that, in which you need to buy the inventory to be able to generate the sales, right? But the same thing, although it's not inventory, in other categories, you're going to need some level of like the software, right? You don't have an inventory, you need to build software to sell it, right? So you do all these capital expenditures and with the hope that like someone will buy that software. And the way to finance it, you mentioned like some of them are working capital lines, some of them could be equity investing, meaning like raise money from VCs, right, or friends and family rounds. There's a number of recent ways to do it, and obviously like there's like risks involved with each one of them, right? Um, and for us, like the way that we help the lenders is making that process of explaining those customers, explaining but also processing their applications much better, right? So they take care of actually making the value prop on like why their loans are better than others. Well, what we help them is get those loans either approved or denied in a way that is much more simple for the borrower, and that they understand and all of that much better without necessarily going through a lot of red tape, or at least minimizing the lift that red tape entails today.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.